Welcome back. This will be the next chapter of Werewolf, Heart of the Forest. Uh, Last time we left off, we had just explored the cemetery, train station, and the city. Plays this girl named Maya who finds out she is descended from a werewolf, I guess, and one of her grandparents did something bad during the war. So let's continue here. Chapter 2 Logging. The day after. The next morning was full of sunshine and birdsong. I could smell the heat of the afternoon building, those long, honey-like hours in late June when the earth isn't tired of its own warmth yet, but it was crisp and pleasant now. I got up. I sat on my bed for a moment, letting my feet dangle from it. I wasn't sure how I felt. The weight of the previous day had coiled up somewhere in my chest, and it felt like a tiny merry-go-round gaining speed. And there was the dream. Then I remembered the dream, the clearing, the animals in the night sky waiting for me. I took a shower, ate something without really paying attention, and went out. Summer morning. We were halfway through the forest when I realized we were walking toward the logging site. That's where the big protest was that were going to happen. Against the machines. I was running all the options over and over in my head, and I really didn't care where I was going. When I looked up, the sun was shining, the village was far behind me, and I was at the logging site. Anya looked around. So what's the plan? To stop the logging, learn about my family, or I need to find someone? Well, I guess I'm here to learn about my family, aren't I? I need to figure out how my family fit into all of this. I looked around. On my right was the ancient forest, on the left was a freshly torn clearing. Ahead of me, ruining the view, were the huge logging machines and a group of people arguing in their shadow. I thought the machines were sucking the life out of the air, like they were a wound, not just pieces of equipment. Was it the clearing? The trees they'd cut down lay in the middle, thrown together lifeless limp, just like in the dream. Surrounding them were harvesters that killed them, and the people who squabbled over their corpses, the protesters, the reporters, the police, and of course the loggers. The harvesters loomed over the clearing, reeking. I saw a familiar face among the protesters. Kim was standing next to a vaguely military-looking white man who was arguing with Olga from the cemetery. The protesters were clearly conflicted. I wanted to know what it was all about. Maybe I could solve the conflict. They clearly needed some advice. Well, we already know what it's about, don't we? Play mediator here, I guess. I thrived in solving conflicts, so I went closer. One of the police officers, young and nervous, said something I didn't fully understand. I ignored him. I'll let Anya handle it. Anya flashed her best smile and flipped him with Norwegian. He smiled back. Oh, he said, you're one of them, and let us go. Then I noticed that someone joined us. And then I noticed someone use the commotion to sneak with us past the police, a girl with the disheveled, bleached-out hair. Don't worry, she patted the officer on the arm. It was an awful pick-up line anyway. He recoiled. You shouldn't touch me, ma'am. I'll smile. I smiled at her and wanted to say something, but I was interrupted. Pat, some guy called her from the gathering. Could you come here? I need to show you how Olga that chart. She sighed, reaching to her backpack and take out a tablet. And they're at it again, she murmured under her breath and winked at me. Coming. We went toward the activists. As I walked towards Kim, I heard more and more of the argument. Olga, you can't. The man was speaking with a strong German accent. Pat stood next to him with her tablet. She looked a bit amused. Do not fucking tell me what I can or can't do, Cornell, Olga interrupted. I can because they are destroying our mother. I can fight with all the means at my disposal, even if that means burning those harvesters to the ground. A slender, green-eyed man was standing near her. He took a few steps back, went towards one of the harvesters, turned his back on us all and pissed on the machine. Olga smirked. Ah, Daniel, you know how to bring the point home. He looked at her, confused. Cornell raised his eyebrows. Burn the harvesters? Cornell asked calmly. In this drought? Olga, are you out of your mind? You know what I mean. We fight them any way we can, because this is a fucking war, she spat. He sighed. You've never seen real war and it shows. Nobody's shooting at us, and believe me, we want it to stay that way. We want a peaceful protest. I approached Kim. Hey, can we talk? I asked, approaching Kim. Oh, Maya, darling, it's good to see you, they smiled. Maybe you'll be able to convince her. Oh, so I was to take a stand. I looked at them. I looked at them both. Olga with her fury and passion, Cornell with his cool, professional demeanor, and shared, without any reservations, what I felt about the situation. Peaceful wasn't fleshy enough. There was a fine line to tread. It was no personal victory. Checking out this character sheet here. I'm doing pretty good on relationships so far. Everyone's like sympathetic or neutral mostly. Uh, There's a fine line to tread, I said in the silence. You don't want the protesters to be painted as terrorists, and you don't want them to be treated as irrelevant and ignored. Kim shook their head and moved forward. I observed him curiously. Olga, darling, you know I love you, but Cornell really knows what he's doing. Please trust me on that one. They looked at her unapologetically. Fuck off, Kim. You don't even trust me enough to come here on your own when I asked you to. Lisa decided to say something. Lisa looked them straight in the eye. She had a peculiar accent. Kim, you want to teach me about violence? She looked at them straight in the eye. About fighting oppression just because your boss went to what, one mission in Afghanistan? Her Polish was peculiar, kind of mellow. Cornell winced. Lisa, leave Kim alone. He didn't know what to say, and it seemed the whole discussion would be derailed. Um, Hey guys, the forest, I said, the logging, the protest. Olga unclenched her fists. Cornell looked back at her and chuckled softly. You almost punched me. The conversation was over, at least for the time being. Cornell, together with his cronies, walked towards the reporters while Olga went back to the group of people standing in the shadow of an old oak tree. I looked at the forest. I looked at the pusaka. The clearing full of felled trees was like a gaping, bleeding wound in the chest of a friend. I had to do something. I look at my friend. We have to stop this logging. Yes, just like Olga said. Anya nodded, excited. What they are doing is unforgivable, and we have to fight. I looked at one group, I looked at the other. The harvesters were dripping with black oil, and the forest stood tall, serene, and full of golden light. It looked like it could protect itself. And then I looked at the felled trees, dead, limp, helpless. We're looking for answers here. In the limelight, as I approached the group, Kim waved at me. Come here! They took me straight to the leader of their group, the man who was arguing with Olga. Hello, Maya, he said. I see you haven't come alone. He reached out his hand. I shook it. His handshake was firm and strong. His eyes were an uncanny shade of gray. He might have been in his early 30s, I thought. Damn, he looked tough. Damn, you look like a tough guy, I blurted out, impressed. He was, in that bad boy hipster military way. I know, he said without skipping a beat. Cornell looked me in the eyes. I know why you came to Bibleveza. The forest is reaching out to you because for a long time your ancestors were its servants, and now you're the only one left to pay what they owed. He seemed to believe it. I looked at him, skeptical, but he seemed to believe it. The important question is, he looked at me intensely, do you want to help? I had no time to answer. But before I could answer, I heard a commotion and turned around. The reporters were coming our way, but their cameras were switched off and pointed at the ground. Why weren't they filming? Funny, I thought they should be taking photos or filming the protest, but I couldn't remember if they were when I arrived on the site. So, asked Cornell. There was a hint of impatience in his voice. The reporter shook his head and grimaced. Sorry, everyone, we can't do anything. We're not allowed to cover what's going on here. What did they mean? Suddenly understood. I deflated. Then it hit me. The police weren't there to protect the protesters or the press. Yeah, it must be hard to do your job when the police is watching every step, I said, and they nodded. There was a moment of tense silence, and then it all came together. Suddenly I understood the dream. That was the moment I was destined to intervene. The press was too quiet. They needed inspiration. I just had to make the reporters understand. We could still use the reporters. It's my reputation with the press. Sympathetic? Keep talking. I looked at the protesters. Their frustration is getting to me. They didn't have any real plan. They were ragtag munch thrown together by circumstance without any real plan or clear purpose. I looked around, put my hands in my pockets, and wandered towards the journalist. Just need a little nudge. I've always wanted to be a journalist, you know, I said to the nearest one. The fourth pillar of democracy and all that. But maybe things work differently here in Poland. He looked at me with tired eyes. I winked. He smiled. Unspectacular as it was, I managed to connect. I acted on it. Does it always look like this? I asked. I mean, is it an everyday situation that you can't report? No, answered one of them. He was tall, in his 30s. There was a few glances toward him, almost a flash of warning, but it was too late. Hmm, why weren't they filming? Why were they there at all? So why don't you film? I'm sure there's something newsworthy here. I was about to let them off the hook. Where I come from, there are usually more journalists than protesters and officers combined. They looked at one another, suddenly unsure of what to say. Unheard shouts as Olga and her protesters clashed with the police, and the cameramen grabbed their gear and ran toward the action. Remember, we want the aggressive ones, shouted one of the reporters. I could see the logo of the national TV station on his camera. Soon we were alone. Fuck! Cornell swore, threw his thermal cup at the ground. It bounced, spilling hot coffee everywhere. Someone grabbed me by the shoulder. I turned around and saw Kim. This is when you exit the scene. They turned me around and gently but firmly pushed me away. We'll be in touch, they whispered. The ugly truth. When I was on the road to the village and nobody could see me, I stopped and screamed. A startled flock of birds took off from the trees nearby and filled the air with feathers and movement. In the whole commotion, I lost Anya from my sight. I was alone, or so I thought. Hey, let me help you, a voice behind me said, and I jumped. A woman was looking at me with concern. What happened? It was too much. It was too much, I whispered. All of that. We walked slowly toward the village. We talked. I learned that she was an independent German reporter who'd come here about a month ago. Her name was Erica. So why are you protesting the logging? She asked after a few minutes of small talk. Why was I protesting the logging? For personal reasons? Well, I guess that's why we have to save the forest, isn't it? I think the Puska is unique, and when I saw how many trees they've cut in just one afternoon, it broke my heart. I said, still shaken by the sheer number of fallen trees, I have to do whatever I can to save the forest. I looked at her. And why are you asking? She looked at me with renewed interest. Do you know why are they cutting down the trees? She asked back. Because you know the logging is done by a government company? The state forests? I had no idea. I didn't know that, I admitted. In fact, I knew very little. I know very little about the situation, I realized. Just what the others have told me. Erica reached for her notebook. It all started with spruce bark beetles. Erica looked into her notes and started explaining the whole situation. That year, the beetles' infestation was of catastrophic proportions, and the foresters decided that the only way to stop it, save the rest of the forest, was to cut down as many infested trees as possible. Was the logging legal? Well, it's obviously legal. Hmm. Is cutting trees the only way to stop the infestation? I asked, confused. The foresters state that is the only way, she said. Some biologists argue they're cutting the wrong trees and doing it too late to change anything. They just remove the dead trees. Maybe if they removed the dead trees, the infestation wouldn't spread. I tried to find a solution. They might do that, but dead trees are what make the forest unique, Eric smiled. There are 20 times more species living on the dead spruce tree than on the live one. Was the logging legal? I wanted to know. Opinions differ, but such massive logging as a UNESCO listed area might be illegal, Eric answered. Did they have to intervene at all? Couldn't they just leave the Pussesa alone and let nature take its course? I asked. That's one of the options, Erica admitted. But there's a drought, and no one is sure if the forest would survive on its own. It was a complex situation, but that didn't mean that I should step back, and I felt that Erica was deliberately playing the devil's advocate. Say any advice. Not sure what to think about it, I admitted. I could really use your advice. I'm just doing my job, Erica shrugged. I describe all aspects of the situation to you, but it's up to you to decide what you want to do. It was a tough decision. I shook my head. Why did the situation have to be so complex? At least I was sure they were cutting down the trees, and the pusa needed my help. What happened to the wood? What else could I do? When they cut down the trees, what happens to the wood? I asked Erica. The state forests have to be financially self sufficient. They earn money by selling forest products, including wood, she answered. That's why I think the bark beetle is not the reason, but an excuse to push more wood on the market, I concluded my case. She looked skeptical. You're not the only one feeling helpless, she sighed. So, don't let the complexity of the situation stop you. Life is always complex, and yet we carry on. So, what was right and wrong? So, what should I do when I feel that something is wrong? I asked, exasperated. Do you believe that people can be evil? She asked back. Well, yeah, duh. Some people were bad. Some are for sure, I shrugged. But isn't that too easy of an explanation? I said nothing. What's the matter? She asked. I shared my fear. Something wasn't right with the whole situation. I didn't know what it was, and that scared me. I took a deep breath, and then I remembered what Cornell had said. All that mystical stuff. And they said that I have some family debts to pay. I shook my head. It's a lot to take in. And there was that foul smell back there. She looked at me with a weird expression. What smell? She asked. How come she didn't smell it? You didn't smell it? The harvesters reeked of something. Like like meat that's been rotting in acid, only worse. I couldn't even find the words to describe it, but the memory of the foulness still clung to the back of my throat, swimming in my sinuses. I know what you're talking about, she answered slowly. I don't think everybody can smell it. I looked at her and raised my eyebrow questioningly. There was sympathy in her eyes. "You'll learn it in your own time if I stay here long enough," she said, clearly wanting to drop the topic. "I'll let go." I shrugged. Cryptic remarks never did anything for me. The situation was complicated enough as it was. I just hoped I hadn't made things worse. We walked on in silence. Time to regroup. Anya came back soon after me. "I lost sight of you," she said apologetically. "I'm glad you made it back in one piece. So how's your day?" Anya asked. "A lot of people," I shrugged. "Met some very interesting people," I said, still excited. "Yeah, they look like a colorful bunch," Anya grinned. "Maybe you could introduce me later? They sure are passionate. They argue between themselves more than they argue with the loggers," I added. I learned a lot. "Did you know that the government supported the logging even when it was illegal?" I shared my dismay. Anya just nodded solemnly. "Yeah, I've read about it. Why didn't you tell me?" "Well, you have a lot going on," she shrugged. That was all I wanted to share. Just spent the day in Bioveza. We sat for a while in silence. There's more to see here than Bioveza," Anya said from her travel guide. Pogozelveze, Budi, Teramiski, Serslanka. There's something interesting in every village. An open air museum, some kind of folk university, the bison. Maybe you'd like to see something more than logging. Maybe we can go somewhere I can pronounce. Is that an option? It'd be great if I could see everything, but I can't, I shrugged. I want to focus on logging, even if I'm missing something else. "How's the search for your roots going?" Anya couldn't stay silent for long. Share what I've learned. "It seems that my ancestors lived around the forest for a long time," I said, "and there are some kind of debts to be paid." "Wow," Anya looked impressed. "Honestly, I'm not sure what to think. But if you need something, just let me know." I just sat there looking through the window that they'd been full on, and I was exhausted. I didn't notice when I fell asleep. I can do anything. It's quiet now. Yet I know deep down inside that something isn't right. Well, my rage is all gone, so I should run. I'm running through the forest to the logging site. It's getting dark. The light seeps away as though there are millions of tiny punch holes in the sky through which it can escape. Then the darkness starts to pour in. I know what I will see. And I see the bodies strewn across the ground, bloodied, maimed, with their limbs torn from destroyed torsos. I can see some of them still alive, still struggling for air, still trying to live. They are all trees, fallen trees, still alive, still struggling for air. Stench, movement. I see shapes moving in the darkness. They have long skeletal arms. They are wrapped in glistening black intestines, and each arm has a wide gaping mandible full of whirling blades. They snap at me blindly. I feel righteous anger burning through my feet, up my legs, through my chest, To my head, I point at the monsters. My friends watch as I bask in their rage. I howl the sentence, and we run toward the monstrous shapes. I bite off heads and tear off arms. We are on executioner's ask, unflinching. Then I wake up. I gasped and bolted upright. I was alone. The sun was setting, and in the deep, red light, the room looked like it was bathed in blood. My pillow and duvet were on the ground, and I was sweating bullets. I looked at my legs. When did they become so hairy? I could have sworn I shaved them that morning. It's only a half hour. I think it's time for another chapter. Standoff. I need to talk. I thought about going back to sleep, but I couldn't. Since I'd arrived in this village, I felt like I was falling down a rabbit hole, or rather a wolf's den. My dreams were getting more and more vivid, and I was scared. I need to talk it over with someone I trusted. Kim seemed okay. Anya was from the start. There's no guide towards. I think she knows more about dreams, doesn't she, Kim? Thought about Kim. They'd have lots of experience and they seem to accept all the strange shit that life throws at us. We definitely hit it off as well. The sun had just set and the moon wasn't up yet. I started walking. The forest loomed on the horizon. The activists' camp was somewhere there. I soon ran into Anya. "Oh, Maya, good to see you," she said. "I need to talk." I was all ears. "I'm worried about you. Since we get here, you've looked distressed," she explained with a sigh. "I've asked around, and it seems you're associated with some dangerous people." "They know things about my family," I answered, "and I need that information." "And I could use some support?" "To be honest, I could really use some support," I sighed. "Would you come with me?" Anya smiled. "Sure, sister," and we walked together. All together now. The camp had a different vibe than the logging site protest. There were more people there. We looked around trying to take it all in. "You are coming and coming." Anya laughed, excited. The people in the camp seemed quite cheerful. The smells were intriguing. I watched them for a moment. Someone singing. I heard 3 or 4 girls singing together in a unique Eastern European style called the white voice. It was the most melodic, throaty growling I'd ever heard. I listened for a moment. I stopped and just got lost in the music for a long while. People were milling about, setting up camp, cooking, preparing posters. Everyone was busy. I looked around. I definitely needed to talk to someone about what was going on, about what I felt. So doing this. I want to talk to Kim, didn't I? "Hello," I said as I approached. Cornell smiled at me. "Hello," he said. "What brings you here?" "I need answers." I shrugged and dug my hands deeper into the pockets of my jeans. "I have so many questions about myself, the forest, and the logging." Cornell looked at me with those uncanny gray eyes. I could feel his attention lock on me. "That's okay," he said. "Join us and you'll understand. We're here to stop what's happening, to show that we don't agree, and that we hope to make a difference." "Will it work?" I asked. "I don't know. All I know is that it worked before. It worked for Gandhi. It worked with segregation and apartheid in the end. It worked with communism. So let's see if it works with capitalism as well. Violence is not an option here. He smiled. And I think, quite well the anger doesn't really get shit done. It's kind of an awkward situation for me personally to be in because I try to be a stoic. I don't really try to get emotional over things, but in this case for the story, I try to come at it from their perspective. Um, oh, he's hostile with me. I suddenly felt uneasy. I've heard that phrase so many times, I said slowly, and you know what? I've seen anger getting shit on so many times, so maybe it's time my turn to use it now. I'll see you around, I guess. It's time to talk to Olga. I turned around and walked toward the far corner of the camp where Olga was. Olga spotted me right away. Well, hello again, she greeted me. I didn't expect to see you here so soon. Actually, she gave me a long, hard look. I didn't expect to see you again at all. I tried to rise above it. Made me even angrier. For a moment, I wanted to bite her head off or bark some curse words at her. Took a long breath, and to my surprise, she started to laugh. Her face softened. What brings you here, kid? She asked after a beat. I was confused. Confused, I answered. Is it really true? I mean, Cornell told me strange stories about my past in the forest. There's nothing to be confused about. She shook her head. It's perfectly clear that the government will destroy this unique forest if someone doesn't stop them. You have your obligation to fulfill. She broke off and bit her lip. What do you want to do about it? I want to smash things. I want to do something, I said. Anything. I want to feel like I'm doing something that has a meaning, that will change what happens. I feel like I could smash those harvesters with a hammer. Do you have a hammer? If I had a family debt to pay, I couldn't just be an observer anymore. She looked at me. Her eyes were like a weird color, like deep, dark honey or molasses. I might, she said, but I need your support because Cornell will try to push his own agenda. The tipping point. They all wanted to do something that night, but after a whole day's discussion, they were still divided on what to do. 3 for one option, 3 for the other. I saw no reason to back up Cornell. Alright. With a little help from my friends, I voted for direct action, and soon we were on our way to the logging site. We had some harvesters to face. Ah, take Annie to go home. Coming with you, Annie shook her head when I tried to convince her to go home. That's what friends are for. Well, don't say I didn't warn you. We were just a group of dark silhouettes running through the night. The moon was hidden behind the clouds. Hide in the shadows? I was glad about that, gracious for the shadows that were hiding us. A new moon would have been better. Of course, I would have preferred a new moon at total darkness so that nobody saw us, but beggars can't be choosers. We soon reached the logging site. And I knew we were there for only because I voted for the direct action. I made a difference. Olga stood in the middle of the clearing, looking at the harvesters. She had a backpack on her shoulder. When she moved, I heard a metallic clatter coming from the inside it. Let's get going, she said. She looked different in the dark. She seemed more angular, broader. Suddenly, I realized I was out to break a number of laws with people I barely knew, but it was too late to back out now. Olga reached into her backpack. She tossed something my way. It wasn't a hammer, but a can of spray paint, red. I looked at Anya. Anya and I exchanged glances and nodded. We were ready. I glanced over my shoulder and saw Cornell staring at me. This was a mistake. He shook his head and turned away. So I could do better next time, I asked him to elaborate. We could vote for a plan that has a chance to actually help the forest. Cornell rolled her eyes. Cornell is a guy, isn't he? Olga noticed the tension between us. People know that I'm right, she said, looking Cornell straight in the eye. You should have noticed it the first time you came here. Your plan will destroy lives, he answered. Knock it off, guys. Please, I said. We have work to do. The tension broke. Cornell shook his head and turned around. We sneaked on. Be careful and quiet, said Lisa. She also looked different. There was camo face paint on her cheekbones. There are some guards nearby. I'll take care of them. And with that, she left. The harvesters loomed in the night, now more than ever reminding me of some distorted, terrible creature straight from a horror movie. Their black cables glistened and pulsed in the moonlight, and their stench hit me like a slap in the face. I shook the can. I shook the can and let the first blotch of paint. It landed on the side of the harvester. For a moment, I thought the machine shuddered, like I'd wounded it. A sudden wave of fear rose in my throat. It would turn, it would crush me. I shook the feeling off. I'll work carefully. Everything was sharp in the moonlight. My hands seemed to shine when I sprayed the machine with the precision of a future surgeon. It wasn't personal. It wasn't about me or the men who would come here tomorrow to find their equipment harmed, mutilated. It was about the forest. I think I might gloss over with Cornell's. I let Cornell join me, and together we wrote slogan after slogan across the wide flanks of the machines. Olga is watching a dangerous path, he whispered at some point. She's so focused on the act of fighting that she's slowly forgetting what we're fighting for. I wanted to say something, but he stopped me. Just watch her and see what she does next. Eventually, our work for the night was done. I wrote, "Save the forest" in every language I know, said Anya, evidently proud of herself. And I might have also Googled translated a few more. I looked at the defaced harvesters. I was proud of us. Man, don't rely on Google Translate if whatever you do. I was proud of what we had accomplished, and I contributed to it. Whatever the deal with my family was, I felt like I'd repaid some of the debt. The paint was slowly drying in the hot night air. Shouts in the night. We stopped for just a minute to admire our work, and for that moment everything was still and quiet. The air smelled of spray paint, the harvesters looked stupid and helpless. And then the stillness was broken. Hey! What are you? What the fuck? Oh shit, 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 shit. Panicked Anya, the guards. This wasn't a good moment to panic. I took a deep breath and focused on the rhythm of my heart. It wasn't a good moment to panic and act impulsively. I looked at the guards. Guards were coming. I saw the silhouettes between the trees, of course, but it wasn't them that caught my attention. It was the trees themselves. The trees have been calling to me since I got here. The trees were on our side. The trees could protect us. We needed to hide. I poked Anya and gestured towards the trees. I noticed a spot that would be really hard for them to find. Anya nodded, and we started sneaking towards the trees. Olga was standing still, though, like most of the others. I'll hide just to save Anya. Whatever she wanted to do, I reckon it was always good to have a hidden ally. In the shadows. I get to the tree I'd spotted earlier and press my back against the trunk. The smell of the forest gets stronger, the air around me stiller. I heard Anya's ragged breathing. She was huddled among the tree's roots. Stay here for now, I whispered, and if anything bad happens, just run. I looked at the clearing. I looked out, ready to intervene. Olga stood in the middle of the clearing, hands on her hips, head a little tilted, waiting for them to notice the whole group. Is there a problem? She asked. You're damn right there's a problem. We're calling the police. Don't move. One of the guards was waving his phone. I waited. Go ahead, Olga said, shrugging with confidence. I couldn't explain. He paused, unsure, and in that instant the phone flew out of his hand. I don't know how Kim got behind him. They were there, chuckling mockingly. Oh, sorry, did you want to call someone? The man turned around and punched them right in the face. They didn't even flinch, and then they grabbed the man, lifted him up, and threw him at the other guards. I bet Anya can probably run away. I can join the fight. Night fight. The clearing shattered like a broken window into sharp pieces, its edges cut clean by the rays of flashlights swirling in the darkness. One piece a shout, another, a silhouette leaping. A dodge, a grunt, a punch, a cry, curses in 3 different languages. I slipped between the pieces, hiding in the shadows. My body slammed one of the men, and he stumbled. I lured him into the forest. Whatever my connection with the forest was, it was a good time to use it. I laughed at him and ran towards the trees. He came after me, blinded by anger, tripped on a root sticking out of the ground, and fell with a loud thud. A flashlight shone his way. Anya screamed. Anya screamed and grabbed my arm. I saw blood. Blood on his head, blood on the stone next to his head, blood on the ground, dark and fresh. I didn't really mean to. My heart sunk. What had I done? I took a step back. Then I heard a shout. She killed him! One of the men shouted, the horror clear in his voice. He directed his flashlight at my face, blinding me. I moved out of the light. I ignored him and dodged out of the light. A second later, I noticed a huge silhouette behind him. He looked at me, and his eyes were glowing. Leave her alone, it growled, and I recognized the voice. Was it Olga? It was Olga. She was bulging, muscles growing bigger, bones getting longer. She let a joyous roar, grabbed the man, and slashed him with her claws. I looked at the 8-foot-tall, fur-covered monstrosity, and for a moment I hoped that I was dreaming. I shook my head. Something warm landed on my face. More blood. Howls. Terrified screams. Anya looked at me, panicked. What do we do? The man screamed again and pointed again at Olga. I acted on instinct. I zeroed in on him, pointed the gun, and launched myself at him. Okay, so your willpower dropped to 0. When you lose all your health or willpower, you become impaired. This will make physical tasks. You have 0 health, or social and mental tasks, you have 0 willpower. Harder and sometimes impossible. A gunshot tore through the night. And then there was only pain. The pain was unbearable. Nothing in my life had prepared me for this. Do you mind? I'm trying to read here. I started laughing, because why not? Blinded by the blood in my eyes and the searing pain in my shoulder and chest, I could only laugh. This wasn't what I'd expected from this trip. You spend so much time planning, only to see your whole life crash and burn. All I could do was laugh. I knew how serious it was. So I laughed, grinding with bloody teeth until my strength left me and I couldn't hold myself upright anymore. The forest caught my foul with a bed of moss and twigs. I stopped thrashing and the cold numbness engulfed me. I gave up. My eyes were open and I stared blankly up the trees. There was a small fragment of the sky visible between the branches. The clouds moved and there was light. The full moon. It looked different. The moon was a goddess, and she noticed me. Get up, she said. I got up. I get up. I feel good. I know that I shouldn't, but I don't remember why. I don't care. Well, we need everything. Should clear my mind of all. My mind is clearer than it's ever been before. I see the world in sharp contrast of black and white, movement and stillness. I smell prey, I hear the language and the hooting of owls, the whistling of the wind, and the snarling of wolves. I am what I was born to be. I stretch. My muscles are sore and cramped, so I stretch like I've never stretched before. My arms are longer. My legs are stronger. My heart is pumping, and I feel like I've spent my whole life packed into a box that finally been set free. I breathe. I take a breath and feel my ribs and muscles move. The forest smells of blood and fear and excitement. I'm happy. I laugh happily, and others' laughter joins me. I laugh and sing to the moon. Something touches my leg. I look down. There's a small, malformed creature sticking something sharp into the muscles of my thigh. The creature disgusts me. Its arms are too short, its legs bend the wrong way, and it's covered with a tangled mass of dead plants and the skins of tortured animals. It reeks of things dark and slimy and decayed. This creature, it's just like a person dressed in leather and cotton, or what? When it says stick my hand in it, does it mean stick my hand in the creature or the wound? I'll just push it away. I push the creature away and it flies through the air making funny noises. Then it hits a tree and stays there, pinned to a branch like a butterfly. My ears prick and I hear the more creatures running blindly through the bushes. I feel better. My leg no longer stings and I feel better than ever before. Is this a dream? Maybe it's a dream, I think, as I move silently through the undergrowth. The creatures are running away, their backs turned to me. They stumble and shout. Suddenly one of them turns my way. It is terrified. I'll roar, scare him. I roar and the creature falls down and curls into a ball. It smells of ammonia. Piercing light burns my eyes. The creature surrounds me. They seem to work like a pack. They are dangerous. Bring it on. With a roar, I attack them as they slowly stumble, trying to understand what's happening. There are sharp noises, then sudden flashes, and the air smells of fire and singed hair. It hurts. They hurt me. I bite, and I punch, and I roar. A new smell. The wind brings a new smell. The air tastes of fur and musk and blood. Shapes move among the trees, but there are no creatures. They are people like me. Suddenly, I'm surrounded by them. I think I know them. They seem familiar. It's like I met them in the past, but they were hidden. They close in on me. What do they want? Well, I'll wait. I relax and wait for them, unflinching. They approach me and sniff the air. Their smells are overwhelmingly familiar. Once the people had sounds attached to them, but now I realize the sounds are not their true names. I look up and see no moon, only clouds and tangled branches. Something changes. Something changed, and I realized how tired I was. I stumbled. Darkness. Nothing was okay. The night sky was full of stars. I opened my eyes. Confused, I opened my eyes. The forest around me was thick and dark. The tree trunks, wrapped tightly in dark-leaved ivy, were covered in ripples of lichen where the vines hadn't taken hold. The thorny, leafless bushes at their base were overrun with nettles. The fungi radiated with ghoulish, sickly green light. Dark, sponge-like mushrooms clung to the fallen trees. So this is a replay of the intro, is it? Something was wrong? I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I looked down and saw my hands covered in a dark substance. I was naked, a sticky, glistening film of liquid clinging to my skin. I could feel it on my face and my hair. Blood. Whose blood was this? Had I killed someone? I knew what was coming. I remembered my dream and slowly lifted my eyes. Dead bodies were strewn around. There was a severed head right in front of me. I felt sick. The face was contorted, the eyes bulging, the mouth open. The tongue stuck out. It was obscene. I doubled over, retching. I recognized that face. It was one of the security guards, the one I had argued with. The head watched me with reproach. No! I let a long, blood-curdling scream. The night swallowed it. The bushes rustled, and a moment later I saw Olga coming out from between the trees. She looked at me, at the head, at my face. She came closer and squatted beside me. It's okay, she patted my shoulder. You're a werewolf. I looked at her and blinked. Well, you could have sugarcoated it at least. Everything faded to black. Oh boy, that was fun, wasn't it? We just, I know we just finished Sally's playthrough on We Happy Few, so I figured I might as well go back and play this for a bit. Yeah, so we finally get to become a werewolf, and we just passed the hour mark for this one. So we'll pick up at chapter 4 next time. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good evening.